Okay, in these hectic times and these hectic shipping times around the holidays, when you got to get packages somewhere absolutely positively on time.
Probably should hand deliver it would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, that is one option. Just saddle up on the horse and get riding. You'll be there in 3 months.
Yeah, Pony Express, baby.
Do you when you take a package to FedEx or UPS, do you tape over if you print your own label and they don't print it for you, one of their nice glossy stick-on ones? Do you packing tape over the printed label?
No. I have a big stack of bags that I got from FedEx last time I went there.
Man,
you got to use the bags, man.
Wait, will they just let you take them?
Yeah. Okay, look, you can go into FedEx and they'll just hand you boxes that are FedEx size boxes.
Man. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot.
You clearly did not ship a lot of hardware back in, like, this is the difference between people who reviewed hardware and people who reviewed games.
Yeah.
You never return a game.
They almost never ask for, unless it was like a burned preview copy of something that wasn't out yet. And even then, we usually didn't send them back anyway.
I have a big stack of EA confidential discs in my garage somewhere, I'm sure.
Yep.
But like the hardware people were always like, hey, man, can you send that $5,000 computer we sent you back? And you get a real good relationship with FedEx at that point.
Sure. I believe that. Well, okay. My SOP has always been to print the label out at home and then put packing tape over it on the box so it doesn't get wet or whatever.
That works for FedEx for UPS for what it's worth. FedEx won't do that, or sometimes they complain.
FedEx was fine with it, except that my packing tape job was just wrinkly enough that they couldn't scan the barcode, and they were fine with it. They were just like, "Oh, here's an email address for this store. Just forward us the PDF. We'll just print it out here, and you're fine."
Well, that's not bad then.
Getting a PDF out of, I was returning something, so it was from a company's like built-in RMA process.
Yeah.
What they had sent me was a URL, and you clicked that URL, and it opened a page that was not in and of itself a PDF, but you could print it.
Yeah. Then you can make it a PDF. That works.
So on the spot, they were just like, "Hey, just pull it up and email it to us. You'll be fine." I could not turn that goddamn page into a PDF to save my life. I wanted to die. I stood in that FedEx for upwards of 30 minutes. Because it was a heavy box that I walked it like 12 blocks. I did not want to, and it was like 7 o'clock at night. I did not want to take it back home and come back the next day. But I was on my iPhone. I could not like press and hold on the document to save as a PDF. Like if I tried to save out to files or Dropbox, it was trying to save whatever the web page was, not the actual embedded PDF. Like it had like a blob prefix on the file name or URL.
That's weird.
And so then I tried to print using the iPhone's built-in print in Chrome and Safari. And then that's basically rendering out a PDF, right? If you tell it to print the page. And if you do the print option in iOS, then you can export from the print dialog rather than printing to a printer. You can export to an app. So at that point, I was like converting the page into a PDF and trying to save that out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that should work,
and
right?
And you would think it gave me a PDF that was exactly half of the label, and the bottom half was just blank.
Oh, yeah, because it probably only showed what was on the screen. See, if you had a bigger phone, this wouldn't be a problem.
So then I was like, maybe I can just send them because there was no PDF in the email. I'm sure it's clear by now. So I was like, I'll just send them the URL that this company sent me because you don't have to log in. They can just click the link and get the PDF themselves. I sent it to them, and they were like, "Oh, we're not allowed to click external links. You have to send us a file." Could
you? That's a great corporate policy. Could you not get the whole label on your phone screen at once?
That's what I ended up doing.
I was gonna say, because then you just take a screenshot of it and send them the screenshot and call it a day.
That's what they ended up recommending that I do. I was worried it would be too low resolution because you're limited to whatever resolution you're able to fit onto the screen. And I have an older iPhone, which is fairly low res.
Yeah, but it's still not single pixel. It's still double pixel.
It's still pretty high DPI. Anyway, that's what they ended up having me do. And it actually did work.
So let me tell you the secret of FedEx, the real down and dirty. Here's what you need to know so you never have to worry about this again, is if you will pay them $4, the FedEx guy will just stop at your house and pick up the package for you.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm learning a lot
here.
You
never have to go to FedEx again, Brad.
I guess not. I came out of there A, fuming, but B, not fuming at people. They're very nice, but fuming at like web pages and printer dialogues that don't work right.
So for like returns, they may not do that. You may have to pay more for that.
Yeah.
But often, usually you can just say, hey, man, come pick up. And sometimes if you have like 3 packages, they don't even charge you.
Huh. Wow. Okay. That's good to know, man. Like I've learned a lot in the last 12 hours. Like what have we learned? Don't tape over your label. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's in the works. When's that SE coming out? Okay. Don't tape over your label.
Yeah.
I will never go ship something like this again without the PDF label in my Dropbox ready to download if necessary.
There you go.
But also maybe just grab a bunch of those little stick-on bags.
I mean, so here's the thing. You can also get folding boxes and bags and just have them ready to go for things. Like returns, maybe not. But, but for like if you need to FedEx something to somebody, there you go.
Or you know what? Maybe just pay them to come get it.
Maybe that's at the end of the day, the right way to go. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Happy holidays to you and everyone listening.
Happy holidays. I know. Wait, we don't have any weird time stuff on this episode for once. Okay, no, everything's cool.
Yes, this episode is in fact posting like the day after we're recording this, not some number of weeks in the future out of order. So,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah. You know, temporally sound here.
Yeah, like no causality violations. That's what we shoot for here at Brad Will Made a Tech Pod.
That's
is zero universe ending technologies built. This week, to celebrate the end of the year, we decided it's time to rank some stuff.
That's right. And frankly, reality may in fact fold in on itself as we try to get through this list as I look at it.
Yeah, like we were talking about things that could be mini rankings. And then one of those ones on that mini ranking list, I was like, that's not a mini ranking. That's a big, giant honking project.
Yeah, we had like a whole list of little mini rankings that were, like 15 minutes. Like, we could just rank something quickly and move on if it's not fun or whatever. But then one of them,
I'm incredibly skeptical of our ability to mini rank something quickly, just on the outset. But yes,
that's fair. That's fair in a general sense. But also this idea. A ranking of connectors, ranking of cables, ranking of ports, ranking of connectors. It's all ranking of things that plug in.
So I think cables is too broad. I think this is connectors.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, a cable is just a cable that comes out of a connector. It's defined by the connector, of course. At any rate, this idea clearly was not going to span a mere 15 minutes.
No, and when we started looking at it, it got bigger and bigger the longer we got, and so. That's what we're doing today. We're ranking connectors. We have a list of like everything you can, like audio, video, analog, digital, data, power. At the bottom, there's a thing that says console cables.
Yep.
And I don't know. Console cables, maybe not one. I don't know. We'll see how we're doing here.
I think the console controller cables part, there are proprietary like AV ports on some consoles. There's the long running Nintendo multi-out. Sony had their own form of multi-out at one time.
There's the GameCube component, the weird plug that thing goes into.
Yeah. That might be. I think that might be the same form factor as Nintendo's standard multi-out, but. Anyway, there is some stuff in consoles to talk about. Although I think a lot of the console stuff is just going to be like, okay, what's our term for feel? Like, what is the plug-in connector equivalent of mouthfeel?
Well, so let's talk about the criteria, right? This is because I think mouthfeel for the connector. I'm not going to put the connectors in my mouth, but I think mouthfeel. I think connector mouthfeel is something we should consider here, right? We got ease of use. And for me, ease of use means, can I lay down on the floor and reach behind a computer or TV or monitor and plug something in one-handed without being able to see it successfully?
Dude, do you know how much of my life I spend trying to plug cables into the backs of things that I can't see? I mean, it is all the time.
I have arranged a lot of my life so that I never have to do that.
That's smart.
But at the same time, sometimes you got to unplug some HDMI stuff from the back of your TV that's hanging off the wall. And that always involves some potential rotator cuff damage if you're not careful.
That's for sure.
So, yeah,
that's for sure.
Okay. So that's ease of use. Reliability is, is this a cable that you're going to trip over and yank out of the wall and it's going to be fine? Or are you going to leave chunks of the connector in the port that it was plugged into.
Yeah. Under reliability, I have just written locking mechanism or not. We'll get into it. That's maybe to be evaluated on a per connector basis, but like, should the cable itself be secured, or is that actually bad in some cases is a topic to explore.
And like, is the locking mechanism satisfying or not? Like,
Sure.
like 2 screws on the side.
Is it easy to
thumbs
mess with?
down for me?
Yep,
But
yep.
what about like duty cycle? I feel like I looked for some duty cycle data about this, and a lot of these connectors don't publish duty cycle. So duty cycle is the number of repetitions you can plug them in and out. Like HDMI is rated for several hundred typically on a port.
That sounds so low, but that's somebody speaking who has spent most of their career plugging consoles in and out like every day. But for most people, you're probably going to plug it in like maybe 5 times in its lifespan or something.
Yeah, our use cases for this are strange.
Yeah.
USB, on the other hand, has a really high duty cycle. Like USB-A has a really high duty cycle, right?
I should hope so.
Let's see. You wrote down here, distinguish between physical connector and data protocol.
Yeah, I think that is crucial here because that's something that trips me up generally. And even looking over our kind of big list of connectors here, there were like 2 more instances just on this that I realized I have been getting wrong consistently, where I was referring to a physical cable by the data protocol that it carries instead.
Yeah.
In this case, it was DE9, which I think I have known as DB9, but apparently that's incorrect. But anyway, I always called the DB9 in a serial context RS-232, but that's the serial data standard, and so
and we'll use I think we'll use the common name.
Yeah.
For most of these, but we'll also specify that it's the protocol if we're talking about the cable that it used.
And we are talking about physical connectors here, but I do think like what that connector lets you do is part of is a factor in ranking them. So and there are a lot of cases here where the same physical connector can be used for multiple data standards.
Like mini DisplayPort can also be old Thunderbolt. USB-C can be USB or Thunderbolt as well. Stuff like that.
D9 can be all kinds of stuff. It could be a serial terminal or a Genesis controller.
Yeah, and then the last category I think is the wild card. Like, I want to talk about the sounds that these things make when you plug them in.
I mean, how satisfying it is to plug in is maybe the most important part.
Yeah, and like whether the clasp is like a good clasp or an annoying clasp.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's some good clasps, not many. But there's some real frustrating clasps.
Oh, yes. I like nostalgia can play a role here as well, I think, in the case of consoles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love plugging in a GameCube controller even to this day. It's one of the all-time bests.
Some of those plugs are just fun to use.
Okay, so we have this big long list. I think we should just start at the top.
Oh my God.
And we have a spreadsheet, and I put a bunch of numbers down the side of the spreadsheet.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Yeah, hi.
The spreadsheet goes to 62.
I can add more. Like
Are we ranking every connector?
I think that was the idea, right?
I figured we would maybe do like a top 10 and cull the rest.
Oh no, I think what we should do is just do it like you know my original pitch for Tested, right?
Sort of.
Is that we should have a ranking of every piece of consumer electronics made, and we just look at it and we're like, oh yeah, the iPhone is clearly better than a Canon Mark III, right? Sure,
but also a couple of foolish but well-meaning podcasters once attempted to rank every piece of software against each other. And
I still think that's a viable project. I agree. That might just be its own podcast. Is the thing I'm thinking. I agree
with you. It was just an excuse to wax nostalgic about old software. But anyway,
yeah. So here's what we got.
Are we just gonna read this whole list? It's a lot.
I can go down it hit it real quick.
All right.
We got in the AV category. And some of these are going to show up in both places. Yeah. We're going to talk about them one time because we're talking about connectors, not cables or protocols or data carried or all that stuff. So we got RCA component, which is just 3 RCAs, XLR, BNC, which is like a coax with a twisty.
Oh yeah.
F-type coax which is a coax with a screw on it.
Yeah, well, I'll withhold questions. I've got questions about so many of these, but I'll wait.
We got Europe's #1 90s video standard, SCART.
Hell yeah.
We got mini DIN / S video, which is like that little 5-pin dealie with the vertical prong in it. We got VGA, aka DB15. We got mini VGA, which nobody has ever seen. Probably.
I have not.
We've got DVI, which is like, we got to talk about DVI for a minute because DVI contains multitudes.
Mm-hmm.
There's DVI-A, which is analog DVI, which is basically just a DB15 in a different package. We've also got DVI-I and DVI-D. DVI and the shape of the connector is the same. The difference is they're keyed a little bit differently, and the pins that are used are different.
Yeah,
I think DVI is one full size DVI is one connector type.
I think for the purposes of this ranking, I agree, and we'll just factor all the subtypes in together.
Yeah. Okay, and then but to make things complicated, we also have mini DVI-A and a micro DVI. We have FireWire 800, mini FireWire, DisplayPort, mini DisplayPort, HDMI, mini HDMI, micro HDMI. We got tip ring sleeve, aka 1/4 inch audio.
Yeah, although there can be just
it can be just tip sleeve.
Is that TS? I guess.
Yeah, like so in this for the analog audio cables, the 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch, which can come in tip ring sleeve, tip ring sleeve, tip ring sleeve, and tip ring sleeve. I believe in the case of the small ones.
Wait, they make 4 Rs? I've seen up to 3, but
I think for headsets, stereo headphones that were phone headsets, they also had a control and a microphone channel.
Okay. Like I know the Astro stuff uses TRRRS, I believe. 3 Rs.
I think it goes all the way up to 4, but I'm not. I think these are all the same for our purposes today, right?
Yeah, like 1/4 inch is kind of like in terms of like plugging in and out, and basic capability is basically the same no matter how many rings it has on it. So yeah, I think that's one connector.
You could pipe more signals through it if you add more rings. That's the thing that you need to know. Anyway, okay, we got Toslink SPDIF.
Mm-hmm. On the TRS or the audio connectors, there's 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch.
1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter, as it's also known, is your standard headphone cable.
Yeah, TRS Mini is the one of the other names for it. We got Toslink SPDIF, which is the optical format. There's also an RCA SPDIF, but it's just an RCA port, so we're not going to talk about that one probably. And then we got Mini Toslink, which I bet most people don't know about, but everybody has had one of those, and they just didn't realize it.
Wait, really?
We'll talk about it.
Oh, is that the one that fits into what looks like a headphone port?
Look, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, man.
All right.
On the data side, we got parallel ATA.
Oh, I don't know.
You think it's internal?
What do you mean?
You think that doesn't count? It's a ribbon cable.
No, what I mean is I don't like the term PATA.
Oh.
It's IDE, man.
Patapon.
Anybody who was there at the time knows it's IDE. I'm just being pedantic, but nobody said PATA back when that cable was in use.
You might not have, but we did where I was.
What? Are you sure?
You got parallel SCSI, which was a big wide boy that came in ribbon and external flavors. I think we're probably going to talk about external flavors because the ribbon is basically the same as your IDE cable.
Yeah, there were multiple pin outs for SCSI as well.
SCSI is wildly complicated and is probably we could do a ranking of SCSI plugs if we wanted to get down to it.
I think 50 pin was the common one. Anyway, we'll get to it.
Yeah. We got SATA, we got eSATA, we got the printer port, aka the IEEE 1284.
Mm-hmm.
We got the serial port, aka RS232, aka DE9.
Yeah, so that's maybe the biggest example of what I was talking about, where serial can go over all kinds of connectors, but DE9, and again DB9, I think is how most people know it, including me. We'll put links in the show notes. We're working off of a couple of good documents that have great photos and explainers for all this stuff, and this cable Bible that we're looking at, which is just on somebody's GitHub page, is the one that says that that port is erroneously known as DB9 to a lot of people, and I don't know where that
port of lies
mistake came from.
Okay, so
anyway,
so then we got the mini DIN 5/8 pin, which I can't even remember what that one is now. We got the MIDI port, aka the DA15, but you know that as a joystick port on the back of your Creative Sound Blaster.
Yeah, or a game port.
Game port. You got the SAS serial attached SCSI and mini serial attached SCSI.
I just bought one last week.
I'm glad you have hands on with those. I've never actually used one of those.
I bought it, and my motherboard has a slim SAS connector that will give you 4 extra SATA ports with an SFF 8654 cable connector, which I got. Anyway.
We got the PS2 port, which was used for keyboards and mice back in the day.
Oh, right.
Not the PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
We got the Apple desktop bus, which was the Apple version of the PS2 port. Different shape, different keying.
And then we got USB,
and then we enter USB.
Oh god,
there's like a foot of USBs here. We got USB 2 stuff, which is USB Type A, USB Type B, Mini A, Mini B, Micro A, and Micro B. And then we've got there's a bunch of weird USB variants because it's really popular that are like the Xbox breakaway cable. Probably not going to talk too much about the weird variants. We've got USB 3, which is the blue ones. Those are Type A with the blue, Type B with the tall, it's like a tall B.
Yeah.
And Micro B, which is the wide micro.
Yeah, that's a weird one because Type A is physically the same. I mean, maybe the pinout probably is not, but the shape of the connector is the same and compatible with USB 2 Type A. But Type B and Micro B are physically different.
Yep.
Which is
it's great.
I recommend following along in these documents if you want to visualize what we're talking about, because I'm sure this is a lot to follow.
And then we got USB 3.1, which brought Type C. There's a bunch of other cable power and like spec changes past that, but the connector stays basically the same. So we're only going to talk about the connectors, A's, B's, and C's here. We've got Apple Lightning. We've got Apple's 30-pin dock connector. We've got FireWire 800. We've got FireWire 400. We've got 6-pin FireWire 400. We've got 4-pin FireWire 400. And then we've got FireWire 800, which is a big square 9-pin dealie.
Man, that thing is a monstrosity.
It's really, it's
scary looking.
We're going to talk about it. It's good. We've got Thunderbolt, which used mini DisplayPort or USB Type-C. So we're not going to talk about Thunderbolt. It can go straight to hell.
Yeah. So this is the other example I was talking about earlier of confusion I've had in the past. I have always referred to what is apparently a mini DisplayPort connector as a Thunderbolt connector, because that's how Apple always built it. But apparently Thunderbolt is just the standard that goes over the mini DisplayPort.
Yeah.
Connector.
The weird thing about mini DisplayPort is it looks a lot like Thunderbolt. It looks like the mini DisplayPort and the mini DVI look a lot like each other. Rather.
Yeah, they do. But that is a generic mini DisplayPort connector that Apple just co-opted to pipe Thunderbolt over, except now newer Thunderbolt goes over USB-C instead.
I think it was Intel that did it actually.
Actually, you might be right now that you mention it. Yeah.
Anyway, then we got networking and phones. We got RJ45, and if you're old enough that you used a modem, you remember plugging in RJ11, which is like a skinny RJ45 into your modem.
The little brother of RJ45. But this is another example where different types of data can go over different connectors, because most people know RJ45 as an Ethernet connector.
Mm-hmm.
But the iKVM that I have uses RJ45 for ATX signals. Like you connect. It's Ethernet on one end that goes to a little interface board that then connects to the headers on the motherboard that handle the power and reset buttons.
Oh, so it's just shorting out those pairs.
So you're able to effectively activate the power and reset buttons on your computer over this what looks like an Ethernet plug to most people. So it's like lots of novel uses for these cables.
That's the nice thing about Ethernet is it's just a bunch of pairs of copper wire twisted up together inside a bucket, right?
Yeah, I believe you can also do RS-232 over RJ45 in cases.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I want to say my Edge Router 4 does serial over RJ45. Anyway, there's a lot here.
Yeah, and then we have SFP, which is the last of the data cables.
Yes, I threw that on here. Small form factor pluggable.
Yeah, that's a network thing, right?
It may be used for other things. I only know it as a network cable. It's mainly like a data center thing, unless you're a lunatic and start getting data center stuff in your house, or like Ubiquiti and I think maybe like MikroTik are starting to throw, or have actually been throwing SFP in a lot of their like prosumer home Soho stuff for a while. It's the big giant chunky thing that takes a transceiver. It's the giant plug that you then have to buy a module to plug into to give you an actual port.
If you have a switch that has 2.5 to 5 to 10 gigabit ports, then you might use those, and they let you. The benefit of using those is you can use copper or fiber.
Yeah, you can use
to connect into them,
or Ethernet. Like you can actually just get RJ45 transceivers for SFP ports and just turn it into a straight up standard RJ45 Ethernet port. So it's like very versatile. It's hot pluggable. It's cool. It's very satisfying to use.
Okay, so then we're into power, where we got the C5, C6 Cloverleaf. This is that thing that plugs into your laptop power brick. It looks like it's 3 plugs and it looks like a clover. The figure 8 is the C7, C8 two plug version of that.
Yeah, which think is super common in the US, or you're talking about the 3-plug clover.
The 3-plug one is on non-Mac
yes.
laptops.
Okay,
crazy popular on those.
That's right. I've seen that on like ThinkPads and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah. Also on monitors often. If you don't have a power AC to DC transformer in the monitor itself, if they have an external power brick, they'll often use that.
Sure.
And then the figure 8 is the thing that's on the back of like PlayStations and actually new Xboxes use that too, I believe, because
they do.
Yeah, because they have the internal power supply. And then the C13/C14 IEC cord is the thing that you plug into the power supply on your computer.
Yeah, like maybe the most common connector on this whole list, and I've never known what it was called until now.
And it also there's multiple flavors of that. We're probably not going to get into it, but for higher than 1200 watt power supplies, I think they have vertical pins instead of the pins that you're accustomed to. It's like a big square connector instead of being a kind of trapezoidal or pentagonal one. And then we also wrote down some console cables here at the end: the GameCube controller cable, the GameCube component plug, the NES controller, the SNES controller.
Yeah, like every controller could be considered here. I mean, they're all just plugs. Like that's mostly nostalgia and satisfying click feel.
Well, and then once you get to like the Xbox 360 and PS3, they're just USB, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, the original Xbox had that cool breakaway cable.
That's true.
If it got pulled, it would separate out and not the system off. Of course, not that the thing was a brick. That thing was not getting pulled off a shelf anyway. But
the original Xbox controller port was also real good, as I recall.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was like a nice chunk.
It was but it was like transparent plastic and had kind of a rubbery feel to it. But that thing is under the hood is just USB. You can actually cut that cable off and rewire it to a USB-A and plug it right into your computer.
Yep. And then the Genesis Master System plug, which was a standard DE9, I think.
SegaRetro.org says that I knew that the Genesis was just a standard connector. It says it's just DE9, but it's not like the EGA looking DE9 or whatever. Oh no, that's DB15, right? But it's not it's not the
serial port. The
RS-232 with the screws on the side. It's just like a rubberized version of that. Apparently that was used on a bunch of old computers as well as the Mega Drive Genesis.
It makes sense. And then I put the Wiimote to nunchuck connector here because that had that nice little clippy clonk. Yeah, that was pretty good. All right.
I actually, my one good Wiimote set is extremely frayed. I either ran over it with my desk chair or or perhaps a piggy may have gotten to that cable at some point. So I need to test to see if my nunchuck still works or not with a chunk taken out of that cable.
Well, I think, Brad, it's time that we start this. Okay. We're now 30-ish minutes into this podcast.
Well, welcome to the next month.
Housekeeping is done. Yep. Yeah. This is the hard work of ranking, I guess.
Yep.
I'm gonna pull. I think what we should do is pull stuff out of the list and place it on the number line.
Okay.
And I'm gonna pick something that I think is gonna be middle of the road.
All right.
To start.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Yeah, I think that's probably a good methodology. Let's just go back and forth and offer examples and placements and then argue.
So I don't know how many items we have on this list because I didn't make this a numbered list foolishly. It's bulleted. But I'm going to put FireWire 400, like the one you think of as a FireWire port. I'm going to put it at like 38.
I'm not going to argue with that.
And then we can go higher or lower. Right.
I've never used FireWire. I don't think I've seen it. I think I've had maybe a motherboard with a port. No, actually, I don't know that I've ever had a PC motherboard with FireWire on it. It was mostly an Apple thing, right?
No, you absolutely had headers. You just didn't have any ports on the back.
Okay,
is what always is because like there was a period of time when every PC had FireWire ports.
I guess you're right. Actually, like it was mostly like cameras, right? Like early digital cameras in the pre-USB era, right?
It was digital video cameras mostly, and like the external hard drives early on were like that. The neat thing about FireWire is it delivered power and data. It wasn't a ton of power, but it was enough to do. I want to say you could get external hard drives that were like mobile hard drives that would be FireWire powered, and it was really fast for the time. Like the original iPod was probably the thing that shipped most that had FireWire.
Oh, that's right. That was prior to the Apple 30-pin connector.
It was before they invented the dock connector.
Oh, I didn't realize there were iPods with FireWire. That's cool.
Yeah, first generation, maybe 2, I think, had FireWire, and then they switched over. It was around the time they switched to the software wheel rather than the rather than the mechanical wheel.
All right. Yeah. I'm, number 38 seems just fine for Firewire for now.
Yeah. Look, it was nice. Firmly middle of the road by today's standards.
Yeah. It seems like an example that we will see repeatedly on here of a kind of stopgap solution before they got to the actual solution. It's like clearly a need existed and the IEEE stepped in to meet it.
I think they thought that it was probably the full solution, but
but it didn't last.
No.
Firewire was supplanted by USB pretty quickly, right?
For the most part, Apple kind of stuck with it for a long time, and I want to say the video industry worked with it for a long time. I mean, it's not the nice thing. One of the nice things about Firewire is the connector was really well built. Like you could plug that thing in, you could plug it in, you could pull it out, you could yank it by the cord. It was sturdy. It was a sturdy connector. The main Firewire, not the mini ones, were a little more fragile, but the main Firewire was pretty good.
Let's see. I don't know where to go here because there are so many love and hate ones on here for me. There are so many that are like, okay, that's ubiquitous. It serves a need, but also there are so many things about it that are super annoying that I'm not sure where to put those.
How about we have plenty of choices, so just pick one.
Yeah. How about one that I think is pretty easy to put near the bottom? How about the Apple 30 pin way down somewhere?
Oh man, Apple 30 pin's interesting though, because it's digital and analog. You get analog out into your car stereo. It was pretty reliable. It had it made a little clicky sound when you plugged it in.
I thought I remember it being pretty flimsy or like it broke consistently. I thought I remembered like physically it did not secure very well and was prone to damage.
Well, I mean, it didn't hold up to abuse well, I think is the way I would put that.
Well, for something designed for mobile applications, I think not holding up to abuse is a pretty big knock against it.
I mean, okay, I guess.
And I mean, especially for contrasting it with what they replaced it with, the Lightning connector, it's a pretty pale attempt.
The Lightning connector I have some real problems with.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I think the Lightning connector is terrible.
Okay, I'm just going to put 30 pin Apple at number 60 for now.
Oh, I think that's going to have to move up a little bit. Okay,
let's just talk about Lightning because actually I think Lightning is pretty great.
Oh, so Lightning. My problem with Lightning is that there's too much stress on the cable to connector join for a mobile device.
Wait, you think
they engineered it really poorly?
Wait, what?
Yeah. So
what?
If the first 10 years of Lightning connectors, every single Lightning connector you see in the real world frayed right at the join for the cable to the connector.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the locking mechanism in the port.
No, the locking mechanism is the port. The other problem with it is they always corroded, and I don't understand why. The fourth pin on them was always corroded on every Lightning connector I ever had.
I wonder if the fraying was largely a result of just people's behavior or habits, because like the same thing happened. Oh, you know what we have not put on here is MagSafe. Actually,
I was meant to ask about that because I don't know if that counts. It's not a real thing, but we can put it on there.
It's a connector. It's a form factor, even if it's just doing generic power. Anyway, that's an aside. But the thing I was going to say is like, remember the early era of MagSafe bricks or Apple laptop bricks and how all those frayed right at the.
I made a video about that,
but that was because people were just winding them too tight.
Yeah, I will assure you, I did not wind my cables too tight, and mine always got busted.
Wait, really? I
used it in a car.
I've never had. You're talking about the Lightning, not the
Lightning, yeah,
not the power brick.
Yeah,
I never had a power brick fray because I was very ginger.
I have 15-year-old power bricks that look brand new.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, the Lightning cable is a bad cable.
Maybe the construction of it in that part, but the connector itself feels like, I would say the Lightning cable is maybe the most solid feeling connector to plug in on this entire list because. There is absolutely zero wiggle once that thing is in that port.
Oh no,
there is zero wiggle.
Oh my God, I'm gonna scream. It's look, they just redid USB so that they could sell expensive cables. And yeah, was it better than USB micro? Probably.
Oh, easily. Lightning?
But you know what I also don't like is paying $20 fucking for a USB cable.
I mean, yeah, that sucks, but also, you accumulated them fast enough, and there were knockoffs quickly enough that it's not that big a deal.
There weren't knockoffs. You came to the Lightning cable late when you had an iPhone 5 and you got a Lightning cable with that thing.
Oh, I had an iPhone 5. I bought one when it was new.
That was the most precious cable you owned because it was the only way to use your phone.
Yeah, of course. I mean, actually, I think there was hardware in there, wasn't there? Like People had to either license or reverse engineer it.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
I believe, because it's Apple.
It's USB, but worse.
I mean, was there a reversible cable on the market before Lightning though? I don't know of one. And that was, I mean, come on. They made a reversible cable at a time when micro USB predominated.
I was okay. So if we're looking at our criteria here, could I plug it? Could I reach behind a computer monitor one-handed and successfully plug it in? No.
Well, that's a very high standard to meet. Almost nothing on this list is going to meet that standard.
But was it an overpriced cable manufactured by a monopolist tech company just so that they could juice their profits and sell a couple more cables?
Okay, come on. That was not just because. I mean, it was. Let's be real. It was a wildly better experience than what it was replacing.
I mean,
extremely better.
Except for the fact that the terminals corroded and the cables broke, and like, had I not been buying a new iPhone every year, I would have spent $100 in cables over 3 years. I like this. This is a bottom half cable for me.
No way.
100%.
I would say I'm going to tentatively put it at like number 20. It can move.
Yeah.
Move. I mean, one thing I'll knock it for, and I mean, I guess it wasn't really necessary at the time, but they effectively never got past USB 2 speeds on that thing.
Oh, it was hella necessary at the time. You could buy a 256 gigabyte phone.
Yeah.
And like backing that thing up on USB 2 speeds it wasn't fast, Brad.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You know what I learned looking on Wikipedia is that there are exactly 2 devices with Lightning ports from Apple that do USB 3 over Lightning. I thought they had never done it. In fact, they did, and I own one of them. The first generation iPad Pro, but only the 12.9 inch models, and the second generation iPad Pro, which is the one I have, will both do USB 3 speed over Lightning.
Over Lightning?
Yeah, apparently. But,
wow.
But I think they just went to USB-C right after that, so they just never spent much.
Proprietary, slow and bad. That sounds terrible to me.
But it was another case where the standards on the market were awful, and they had to do something.
Mini micro USB was not awful. It was
come on, micro USB sucks.
It was entirely adequate. Okay, so what are we going to do next? I am. Look, I don't think this 20 is going to hold for Lightning.
That's fine. I mean, look, there are knocks against it. I mean, I have knocks against it that are even different from yours. Like, it's not perfect, but I think for what was needed at the time, it was pretty good.
What about XLR?
XLR, I have come pretty late to using XLR as I've just moved to that form of recording equipment in the last couple of years. XLR is pretty satisfying to plug in, I would say.
Oh yeah.
That goes for a lot of these, but yeah. And do all XLR cables have that little latch release on it, or is it just like, are there some that do not?
You can take it off. It's like the nice thing about XLR is you can just unscrew the cable and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. It's a big old chonky, good feeling analog plug to plug in. It makes you feel professional.
Yeah. And it makes a good sound and a good click. It's not going to come loose.
Yes. Also, my understanding is it's inherently balanced because it's got 3 pins. It's an audio cable with 3 pins. So it's got 2 signal pins and 1 ground. I was just talking to Vinny about this recently because 1/4 inch cables, you explicitly have to buy a balanced cable. There are unbalanced cables. The balanced thing, I only partially understand it, but it helps cut down on line noise interference. It helps filter out analog interference that is picked up along the way. But my understanding is that that's just kind of built into the basic design of XLR, which is part of why it's popular in recording environments. You're looking pensive. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what Vinny said. It's got the 2 signal lines.
So I'm looking at a Reddit post on the audio engineering subreddit that says the fact that it has XLR port doesn't mean that it's inherently balanced.
Well, now are they talking about the cable or the because the connector on the device? I believe that's relevant. I'm not 100%. We're not recording engineers here.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct.
I think XLR is pretty good. Also, how old is it?
It's ancient. It's really old.
That might be worth factoring in designs that have really stood the test of time.
And then the neat thing about XLR is it gets used because it's a physically sturdy connector too. It gets used for a lot of weird stuff where it's not even being used for signal processing. Like people use XLR cables to physically mount things onto walls and things like that.
Wait, what?
Because you can just buy the connectors and the metal to metal is really, really solid. So I think this is like a top 5 for me.
I'll hear the argument. There are a lot of good connectors on here, but
it's old and good, and it makes a really good clicking sound when you plug it in.
If we put it like number 7 for now.
Wow, Lightning's a 20, but XLR is a 7. I don't know about this, Brad.
It can move.
I don't see 7 cables on this list better than this.
Now I'm trying to think if I do. You might be right. I don't know. Actually,
we'll see. We'll see when we get there.
You want to talk about the F-type coax? I started to bring that up as we were talking about this.
This is the twisty. This is the one with the screw on it, right? Like you used to plug from your cable, from your antenna to the back of the TV.
So I've always just called that a coaxial cable. I did not realize there was a distinction to make there.
Well, so BNC is also a coaxial. It has like a little locking twist.
I mean, I was thinking about that as we were looking at this. I mean, technically, like an RCA cable is also coaxial. I assume.
That's true. Yeah,
like any cable that is this form of single plug, single needle kind of thing.
It's like a single center signal with a ground, a sheath on the outside.
Right.
Yeah.
And apparently there's also the UHF connector, which I don't know if I've ever seen in person. It's definitely too old for me.
Is that 2 screws?
It looks a lot like a coaxial. Again, the F-type coaxial, which is okay. To reiterate, the F-type coaxial is what you'll still find on TVs that you can plug an antenna into.
Wait, do they still have that?
I believe so. Yeah, I think yes. My TV totally does. I've got an antenna run into it right now.
That's a trip.
It's for digital TV now. You know, they don't broadcast analog TV signals anymore. But yeah, absolutely. But it's also going back 40 years. It's also what you plugged your NES into your TV with.
Yeah, if you didn't have NES had an RCA out too, but most people didn't have RCA ends at that point. If you're doing are you playing your NES on channel 3 or channel 4 thing, you were doing the F-type coax. Yeah.
But the UHF coax is prior to that. It looks pretty similar. It's got a similar screw in. It looks like the UHF.
It's a thicker pin.
And it looks like it maybe does not have the kind of rotatable screw on the connector. It looks like you screw the entire connector into, if that makes sense. I refer the listener to the photos on the cable Bible because it's kind of hard to visualize, but it says it's a World War II era connector, the UHF connector.
Yeah, I didn't include the UHF connector because it was done basically by the time like all this other stuff was done. But I think the F-type is bad.
Yeah.
Like I have nostalgia for it, but like it's a pain in the ass. You could bend that center pin real easy.
And it's kind of sharp.
Yeah, it's always pointy. It doesn't have a pin in the center, so like a BNC cable, you take the center core of the wire, and then you put a pin on it, and you jam that into the connector. So it's like mechanically stable.
Yeah.
With this, you're just stripping the wire and running it through, and then there's just a raw wire poking out, which is less good, I think.
I think this probably depended on the quality of the cable, but sometimes the kind of screw-in mechanism on the cable didn't work great, and sometimes you would end up having to twist the entire cable along with that thing to screw in and out.
That was terrible.
Also, I guess this is another case of cable versus like standard, but RF video is what went over this thing, right? I believe is what you called it. Like RF video looks terrible. Yeah. Like the quality of video you got out of this thing is not good.
But we're not talking about data protocols here.
Well, I mean, I think the whole experience matters though, like what the cable lets you do. And if the quality of what you're getting out of the cable is bad, that's absolutely relevant.
All I know is if you got a connector that was seized and you had to twist the whole cable to do it, it was a real pain. And also it was hard to get that thing threaded. It definitely fails the can you reach behind the computer monitor one-handed and successfully plug this in test.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I can do it. I have done it plenty of times, but it's a pain.
We can set up a contest if you want, Brad. We could stream that.
Now we're talking.
I think this is definitely a bottom like 10th probably for me.
We're gonna do like double dare for cable connectors.
I mean, look, I think if anybody has an audience for that kind of content, it's probably us.
Am I going to be like thrashing around in a bathtub full of pudding trying to plug a VGA cable in?
I'm not here to kink shame you, but I am not going to get in a bathtub full of pudding. That's where I draw the line.
I could see this in the middle of the pack.
This is middle?
Or maybe lower third.
This is below Apple 30 pin for me.
Wow.
It's look, at least Apple 30 pin was a digital connection. You get good signal out of that thing.
Yeah. Okay, man, that's harsh.
Look, somebody's got to be at the bottom of the list, man. And F-type coax is a defining bad cable for me.
It's not great. Since we're in this category, I'm going to say the way that you feel about XLR is how I feel about BNC.
I like BNC a lot, man, except for it did almost kill me one time.
Oh, was that the electrical
incident? Yeah, the 10
base
T uses a BNC cable.
Oh.
10 base T Ethernet uses BNC.
Does it really?
Uh-huh.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's the same connector.
10 base T is 10 megabits, right?
10 megabit coaxial. You can daisy chain. And that's it. Somebody hung aground on a long line for a long time for new listeners.
Is that universal? Like there were no RJ45?
No RJ45 for 10 base T.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah,
that is way before I ever touched any networking equipment.
So I'm going to go and tell you, I have some pretty strong feelings about 10 base T, but I think I can separate my feelings about BNC from the 10 base T feelings.
Yeah. So BNC is another coaxial cable. It is largely used in professional contexts, but where the F-type coax has the shitty little screw, the BNC just has a mechanical kind of a carve out in the metal housing that when you plug it in, effectively you plug the cable in like a coax cable, and then you just give it this really satisfying quarter twist.
It's a quarter twist to a chonk.
And then it just like chonks into place and is then never coming out of that port. It feels so good.
Well, and like I said, the BNC connector, you also place a pin over the center wire. So it's like structurally, it always is pointed at the right place to plug in easy. It is, BNC is like the most, hey, I can plug this in without being able to see what's going on cable we have on this list probably.
Yes. My first personal experience with the BNC is that the Silicon Graphics branded Trinitron monitor that I got off of eBay that was like new in box.
Oh, yeah.
That is still in my parents' basement that is going to become my like Mr. Old retro computer monitor someday. That uses BNC connectors. So I had to get like VGA to BNC cables for that. So you were plugging 5 BNCs into the back of that thing. So good.
So for me, BNC is going to be like up there with XLR, like maybe even if we're talking about like how we're separating stuff out when we get closer.
I'll put BNC
above.
I mean,
wow.
I don't know if it's.
I think once we get to the top 10, we're gonna have to do some. We're gonna have to do some negotiating, probably.
Like putting 2 of these old school, like heavy industrial analog locking connectors right at the top feels maybe a little bit indulgent, but we'll see.
I like to think of that as sending them. Well, I use XLR cables every day.
Oh yes, yeah, same. Yeah. Like those cables have stood the test of time, and also like this is something we'll get into with stuff like USB and HDMI. Hey, remember when signals were just dumb?
Yeah. Also, I think that I use XLR every day means it's probably better than BNC, so I'm moving it up to 5.
All right. But you know, remember when signals were just electrical and analog and didn't have to handshake or feature unidentifiable standards?
Pros and cons
beyond what the cable looked like. You know, you didn't have to guess at what version of HDMI or USB you were dealing with. You didn't have to worry about them handshaking correctly. They just sent electricity and worked.
Look, I did just record a 6-minute video for PC World and Tech Hive about how to determine whether your HDMI cable is good enough for your TV. So let's talk about HDMI. Think about the magic of plugging that thing in the first time and getting your audio and video on the same cable.
Okay, that is a surprisingly positive angle on HDMI to start with that I wasn't expecting. But I guess you're right. You're totally right. As much as I often hate HDMI these days, like here's maybe the best way to frame this. Remember when the Xbox 360 came out and it did not have an HDMI port?
Yeah,
and then
I was stoked. I had a TV that didn't have an HDMI port, so that was good for me.
Was it a year or 18 months before I can't remember. Was it
Falcon?
It was either the Falcon or the Jasper. I think it was the Falcon model was the first revision that had an HDMI. Anyway, the point is, if you had a launch Xbox 360, you really coveted that second revision that had the HDMI port on it because you didn't want to deal with all the analog stuff anymore for your fancy new 720p television that had one HDMI port on it. You wanted to, you're not wrong. Like early on, HDMI was pretty awesome. It was just like, you mean it's just one cable and it does everything and that's it? But then things got more complicated.
It got complicated really fast because remember, for HDMI launched at 720p 60 or 1080i 30 or 1080i 60 or 1080p 30, yes, right? You couldn't do 1080p 60 on launch HDMI.
Yeah, that is correct.
And it also came with a lot of baggage because it included a bunch of DRM shit that nobody wanted, wasn't good for us, the users.
Like HDCP is a scourge. I mean,
Not anymore. It doesn't matter.
It serves a purpose.
Like the exact thing that we said was going to happen with HTTP happened, right? It immediately was broken. It's not a problem for literally anyone who knows how to get around it. All it does is impede people who want to use stuff that doesn't have HTTP, which it turns out everything has HTTP now, so it's probably not a problem. But
well, now strippers have gotten harder to find. Last I checked,
strippers for new HTTP have.
Oh, for the previous.
The point is nobody actually uses the analog hole to make copies of stuff because it's easier to just rip the DRM from the materials themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. All modern consoles let you just turn HTTP off, so like capturing those is not a problem unless you're trying to capture like a movie, which you wouldn't do from a console anyway, typically.
Yeah.
There was a shitty period like the PlayStation 3. You cannot turn off HTTP at all, so unless you have a way to strip the HTTP is just digital copy protection in the signal, to be clear.
Yeah.
Unless you have a way to strip that out with hardware, you just cannot capture a PlayStation 3.
You know what, though? We're getting into protocols here. We're not talking about plugs. The problem with HTTP...
It's a feature of the experience, though.
The problem with HDMI, though, is that it is it's a plug that you can't tell which way is up from feel. And
you
also...
kind of can. You can't feel the female port in the device. You cannot. You can run your finger along the bottom of the connector and feel where the notches are.
Oh yeah. But the problem is you can't tell which way is up or down on the port and on the plug end. And it wasn't part of the standard. So HDMI could have said, hey, the small part is always away from the bottom of the device, is always on the upside. But they didn't do that. So some stuff, the small part's down, some stuff, the small part's up. It all depends on which plug people buy for their devices. And I think that makes it bad.
Yeah. You're not wrong. There's also the enormous can of worms of what came later as they updated the spec.
But that's protocol stuff, right? That's not the connector.
Look, we got to take a more holistic view here. I think like anything that is working with the connector, I think counts here because it's all part of the experience. Like,
okay.
The fact that this applies to a lot of USB stuff as well, especially USB-C. Like the fact that you can have HDMI cables or plugs from the last 20 years and they all have extremely different capabilities and there's no way to look at them and know what's what is a pretty big knock against it. It's
written on the side of the cable usually. You just have to be able to decode that.
The naming of HDMI standards is his own.
There's disaster. Four things to know.
Yeah, but listen to them. High speed, ultra high speed.
Yeah.
Like, what do those things mean?
Well, what it means is you can go to Amazon and buy an ultra premium high HDMI cable. That's the best one you can buy right now for $6.
If you know that, that's fine. But like I've mentioned this recently. I think like those names sound like marketing bullshit. Like I've had people say like, does it matter if which ones I buy if they say high speed or not? Is that just like your monster cable markup marketing spin? Like no, those are specific data standards. Like it's not good.
Here's the one nice thing about this video and audio signaling going digital, right? Is that we went from a world where everybody's like, oh man, I got to buy these monster cables because I got that low oxygen copper and that gold plated connectors. And none of that shit matters anymore. You can just buy the $6 monoprice cable because it's digital.
Oh, you got that good shit, bruh.
Man, I don't need any of that monster no more.
Yes, it has gotten way better in that respect. There,
a little bit less snake oil, a lot more hassle.
I could see HDMI like in the top 20.
Oh man, really?
Like, or even like around 10 or something, 12. What if I type HDMI at number 12 for now?
Let me tell you. See, you're typing early here, man. We got to talk about this.
Look, sometimes you just got to make a move and see what happens.
Let me tell you a story about HDMI. Did you know that thing has rated for 100 plugins?
That's again, to me, that still sounds very low.
Yeah. Do you know what happened when my PS4 Pro's HDMI port went out after I'd had it for about 6 months and I called Sony and they were like,
happen? What did happen?
They said, hey, if you send it back to us and and send us $200, we'll fix it for you.
$200?
Yeah. You know why that was? Because HDMI is a bad port, Brad.
Oh, you're arguing it should be lower.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm fully on board. I thought you wanted it to be higher. Okay, fine.
Hell no.
Fine. How about 25 then?
Yeah, that sounds good. It seems worse than lightning to me.
So I kind of agree with you. The HDMI port on my relatively nice Elgato capture card is starting to feel kind of flimsy and makes a little click every time I plug something into it. I'm worried about that port.
So let me tell you what you do. You're going to go and buy a 3-inch HDMI male to HDMI female cable and plug that in and use the $3 cable instead of the expensive one built into your motherboard.
I've got a bunch of those from 10 years ago from Monoprice.
You got to get new ones.
The problem is I need an HDMI 2.1 capable one now.
Ultra premium.
Because I need to put 4K into that thing occasionally.
Yep. Ultra premium. Like, this is where I think the Wi-Fi people have done it right. Like Wi-Fi, when I thought the retconning of the Wi-Fi names was stupid a few years ago, but now you know that Wi-Fi 6 is better than Wi-Fi 5.
100%. I am with you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, even there, they had at least the alphabetical ordering, which was already better than HDMI, but now it's even better because a number is pretty obvious. Anyway,
I think we should do a USB speed round.
That's a lot to take on right now.
I'm going to say let's do a USB 3 speed round, the blueies.
Okay, so hang on. So are we putting every single variant of USB into its own slot?
Well, okay, so I don't think USB 3 Type A and USB 2 Type A get their own slots because they're the same cable, same connector. Not. But I think all these others are distinct plugs that you can't plug in with. Like some of them are forwards compatible, some of them are backwards compatible, but not forwards compatible.
Okay, well that Saiba hard drive enclosure that I talked about on last week's episode has a USB 3 Type B port on it, which you have listed as Tall B.
I call that one Tall B. That's just my name.
Yes, that's how that's how you're known on the streets.
Yep, they call me Tall. They call you Tall B. I'm Tall W.
Yes. I think that's the only one I've ever used, but I have to say it's quite satisfying to plug in.
So I hate these.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they look. All they do is add confusion to the marketplace, right? You have to get a weird cable. Like, okay, if I'm rating these in the order in which I hate them, USB 3 Type A, fine, whatever. It's the same as USB 2 Type A, the one we all know and love.
We have to talk about that cable because the USB superposition is a damning phenomenon.
Look, but I'm going to say the Type A is a god tier cable for a lot of reasons. We're not going to get into it right now. I think the wide micro is a crime. That's the micro with the extra thing for power delivery on the side, I think is what it is.
I also hate that thing. I think it is backwards compatible though. I think there's a reason they made it micro plus an extra notch.
Yeah, they did. But you can plug a micro into that port, but you can't plug that cable into a micro port, obviously, because it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
I think this should be below like 30-pin Apple. I think wide micro is a abomination that should not have existed.
I also don't like that one. And to this day, every external hard drive I buy still has that on it. All those new Western Digital Easy stores I just got still have the wide micro on it.
They suck.
Why have they not moved to USB-C for those? I don't know.
Because a lot of people don't have USB-C ports on their motherboard that are.
You terminated in USB-A though. That's like
they don't want to ship 2 cables with the hard drives. Okay, so that's USB 3 Micro B. I'm putting it at 70.
Sure.
I really, really dislike this cable. It's hard to plug in. It has superposition problems, meaning you don't know which way is up and you miss it twice before you get it right. The purpose it serves is supplanted by better cables in every way. And I think Tall B is the same thing.
I don't mind that one so much. I mean, I could see it pretty middle of the pack. Again, it feels good to plug in.
It's just, hey, we're the USB form. We're going to come around and talk. We're going to talk to you about we've made a bunch of backwards compatible, forwards compatible stuff that's really good. And also this end is just going to be weird. Yeah. It's just a weird cable.
Although my understanding with USB, the reason that for so many years you never see a USB A to USB A cable, for example, right? And my recent understanding is that that's because until USB-C, there was no auto negotiation built into the spec. So you couldn't
host end and client end were determined by the cable.
Right. So you couldn't give people the potential to plug the wrong ends into the wrong ends.
It's like having a power cord with 2 male ends on it. It kills drives.
Like you had to make it clear to every end user which end went where because the cable itself and the ports weren't able to tell which way things should go. It had to be unidirectional.
Yeah.
So that's at least why there are weird shapes.
I get it.
I like like is maybe a bit strong. I don't mind the Tall B.
We can put the Tall B on the list. If it's anywhere near the top 30, I'm going to scream.
I wouldn't say that. How about 39? Right after Firewire.
Do you think the tall B is better than the regular type B? It's harder to plug in. It's like,
wait,
it's
is it?
blue.
Wait,
I
why
do
is
like
it
the
harder?
blue.
I mean, they're both asymmetric, so they both have the fumbly. In fact, I would say the USB 3 Type B passes the fumble around behind the monitor test better than regular USB because it has more of a notch to feel with your fingers.
Oh man! And also, like once you get the bottom in, the rest of it's just going to go.
What if I put regular USB Type B right after USB 3 Type B?
Slightly worse. I like that.
And I think we have to save USB A if that's a much larger
USB A
conversation.
is a whole, look, I'm going to rate the USB 3 Type A probably above the USB 2 Type A, but just because it's blue and I like blue better than.
Although, well, again, I think we should rank that one later. But that does, I also like the blue port. It's pleasant to look at.
Yeah,
it does lead to crappy situations where some manufacturers go off spec. I don't know if the blue is mandated or not by the
blue's mandated.
Then Fractal has really committed a crime with their recent cases because all of their front ports, they put USB 2 and 3 ports on the front of their recent cases right next to each other, and they're all black just to maintain the like all black look of the case. So
I don't like that. Unless
you memorize which ports are the 3s, you can't tell by looking at them from afar on these cases, and it sucks. But that's a Fractal problem. I guess
they might be that they specify a colors required. I'm not exactly sure about that actually.
Yeah. Anyway,
because some of them are red.
Yeah. Let's table USB A. Actually, I'm going to make a proposal here.
Yeah.
I think this is going to carry over into at least a second week.
It's impossible. The prophecy was fulfilled.
We have, let's see, XLR and BNC, Lightning, HDMI, FireWire, USB 3 Type B, USB Type B, 30-pin Apple, and USB 3 Micro B. Look, the accursed wide micro. That's what we have ranked currently.
If we place one more on the list, then we'll have done 10.
Okay, sure. How about, gosh, there are so many to pick from here.
The PS2 port, the old keyboard and mouse port, that thing stinks.
Does it, you think? That's
it's hard to plug in. You could fuck up those cables real bad and ruin your mouse.
Yeah, you do. Making it just purely round. There's no key on the connector, right? Other than the pinout being asymmetric, there's no other. Like there should have been. Like the point is, like the behind the monitor test, you have to like line it up with the round plug and then just sort of spin it until the pinout matches, right?
And the problem is if the pins were a little bit too long, then you would scrape the pins as you were spinning it, and then they'd be all out of whack.
That's IBM created that port. Is that right? Isn't it the IBM PS2 that originated with?
I think it was the PS Junior, maybe.
But it is an IBM thing, right? Wasn't the PS2 was an IBM line, wasn't it?
I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, PS2 was an IBM line for sure. It was part of
System 2.
It replaced the large computer, the large 5-pin 180 DIN connector from the IBM PC AT line, and the D9 RS-232 that was used for serial mice.
Oh, actually, so I think the PS2 is just a standard mini DIN 6-pin, right? So does that mean that there are other non-PS2 uses for that connector?
I think it's keyed differently looking at it. But the mini DIN 6-pin is that is also. I don't think we have a mini DIN 6-pin on the list. I think we have a mini DIN 5-pin on the list.
Yeah, the Cable Bible identifies the mini DIN 6-pin as purely a PS2 connector.
Yeah.
I do like the colors they chose for mouse and keyboard. The nice little pastel green and kind of purple blue.
You know what the problem with having both of them in the same place was? It's if you plugged the mouse into the keyboard port, bad things happened.
Wait, did it really?
Yeah.
That seems awful. Like, what do you mean? Like, it didn't fry anything?
It just didn't work.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. But yes, having two connectors side by side that are exactly the same shape, but they're not cross compatible seems pretty bad. Hey, USB did solve some problems.
I think the keyboard was always on the bottom, but I can't remember for sure. I think this is a bad cable.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
The other thing about it was you couldn't hot plug it. You had to power it off.
You're right. You had to reboot the computer if you plugged in a PS2 device, didn't you? Man, it's been a long time.
Not only did you have to reboot the computer, and for a long time, if you plugged it in while it was hot, you could fry stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's not great.
No, it's bad.
On the flip side, though, remember overclocking your mouse ports, and I'm being facetious when I say overclocking, but you could, and I can't remember how you did it, but you could, in the Quake era. You could raise the sampling rate of your PS2 port to get smoother mouse movement, but I don't remember how you did that.
You I don't remember. You ran a software tool, if I recall.
You did it in software, but I might have to look that up because I did that to make my Quake better.
Until they let you do 1,000 hertz polling, a lot of people used PS2 mice. Yes, because of that.
There are still competitive gamers, like pro esports people who use PS2 mice, actually, because
that's madness.
It's because I barely understand it, but I believe like electrically it goes straight to the CPU. It doesn't have to go through like the USB HID,
it's a DMA thing. Yeah.
Device protocol.
Direct connection.
So theoretically it's lower latency, but all the problems you have just laid out make a pretty strong case for PS2 being.
I'm putting this at the very bottom of the list.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Something's got to be there. We'll move it up. If something else is worse.
I was going to say like in the 40s or something, but.
Oh, man. 40s.
That's fine. Look, it's not a big deal. We'll revisit perhaps. I don't know if the PS2 port is the worst thing on this list, but.
I mean, maybe something else will be worse. We'll make another number below it. It's fine. That's how the list works.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, we've gotten a good solid hour in on this. Should we table it? And
this might be the project for 2025, just ranking connectors all year. We're not going to do that for real. We're joking.
No. Let us know what you think about this. Maybe we'll condense the remaining ranking a bit if people are or are not loving it. I'm having fun though.
I mean, and at the end of the day, isn't that all that really matters, Brad?
Yes, you're absolutely right. What matters is my personal fulfillment, and everybody else can just get in line.
Wait, that's not exactly what I meant when I said that, but
anyway, so we will get back to this. We already pre-recorded next week's episode, which is the Q&A.
We will have already recorded this by the time you hear this.
So we will go ahead and run the Q&A in the standard next week's slots, but the following week, which I believe is the first weekend in January.
Yeah. CES week, actually.
That's right. So
something interesting happens at CES. We might actually, because I'm betting that there's going to be some new stuff announced that we might want to talk about that week.
It sure seems like it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do a one-on, one-off of this thing for the next few weeks until we get through this mammoth project.
Yeah, I think now that we've established what's going on and gone down the list, it'll move a little faster.
Yeah,
but anyway,
there are quite a few connectors on here I am excited to talk about because we are just those kinds of nerds.
I'm gonna go open up my cable box in the garage and dig out some of the weirdos also because there's some fun ones in there. Anyway, this is where we'll leave you this week. Apologies for the 10. Should we give the rankings as we are right now?
Sure. Yeah. You want to read them off?
Yeah. We have at number 5, XLR, at number 6, BNC, at number 20, Lightning, the Apple Lightning connector, at number 25, HDMI, the normal one. At 38, we have Firewire. At 39, we have USB 3 Type B, which is the tall B that you plugged into like a hard drive or something. At 40, we have the standard USB 2 Type B. At 60, we have the 30-pin Apple dock connector, the one that you used on your iPod and your old iPhones. At 70, we have USB 3 Micro B, which is the wide micro one with like the little thing hanging off the side. Mm-hmm. And at 76, we have the PS2 port, the keyboard and mouse, not console.
Yep. Currently dead last.
Currently the worst port ever made.
Yep.
That'll do it for us this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We, as always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a listener-supported show. We would not be here without you, the listeners, and we appreciate each and every one of you. But we especially appreciate our patrons. If you want to find out how you can support the show, you can go to patreon.com/techpod, where for $5 a month, you get access to the fabulous TechPod Discord and our monthly patron exclusive episode, where I bet we're going to rank some more stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe some side shoots off of this list. It'll be a secondary ranking.
Very possibly. Or maybe talk about some holiday technology or things we've been getting up to during the break. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you all for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. Again, it's patreon.com/techpod. And we want to thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Andrew Slosky, Bunny Fiend, Pro, David Allen, James Kamek, Jordan Lippett, Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer, and Twinkle Twinkie. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the holiday season, so I hope everybody has a lovely holiday, whatever, wherever, and whenever you celebrate. Mm-hmm. And we will see you all next week.